Hey, I'm Julian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fractal ID. We are here to introduce the Identity Operating System, or short idOS, to you. And that's the identity layer for Web3. It's not just me standing here, and it's not just Fractal ID building this, but there is also Quill.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, everyone. My name is Brennan Lamy. I'm the founder and CEO of Quill. We do decentralized databases, but today we're here talking about idOS and introducing this critical new infrastructure standard to Web3.
So in the last 8 years, we've been talking about identity, right? And it's kind of like a unicorn. Everyone has heard about it, but no one has actually seen it in action. And this is why it was super important for us to start with really strong partners, namely LF0, Near, and Gnosis. But what is the idOS? What is the Identity Operating System? It's the decentralized storage of nodes. That means it's a decentralized storage system that allows for data to be online even if the user's offline. That's the access management protocol that puts the user in control of his or her own data. Let me dive into the use cases just to make it a little bit more obvious what the idOS is. And we are quite proud to have Near on board. Together with Near, who is really UX focused, we're building some sample software, like a decentralized social network that has identity built in that you guys can just fork. Gnosis Pay is a very different use case where we're taking a fully obligated entity, so a financial institution, and equipping it with the possibility to have reusable KYC right from the get-go. LF0 is super privacy focused, and we're building something that we cannot reveal right now, but that will be around privacy preserving DeFi at the moment. So let's jump in. Why do we need identity in Web3 in the first place? Well, bot traffic is rampant, right? Like, we're talking about incentives being farmed, DAO governance being broken. We need this. This is for sure. We're also on the verge of crossing the chasm into mainstream, which unsurprisingly got us the attention of regulators that asked us to apply real-world laws if we want to have real-world use cases. And we are advocating for having this in a way that it's Web3 native with the idOS.
The best way to think of the idOS is that it is what the ERC20 standard did for DeFi, but applied to identity. The critical breakthrough of the ERC20, which caused the DeFi wave, was that it created an easy piece of infrastructure and a process for companies to launch fungible tokens and to be in compliance with regulations. This helped them get to market quicker, which allowed them to grow their businesses. Those exact same standards are what we are bringing with the idOS and what these initial adopters are already able to leverage.
So that sounds like a no-brainer, right? And you're asking yourself, why hasn't it happened before? Is no one working on it? And the answer is quite the contrary. There are lots and lots working on it. And indeed, if you're looking at the identity ecosystem, it looks more like my home country, Germany, in the medieval ages. You're just going a couple of miles and you're crossing through 3 different kingdoms. You need 3 different papers and 3 different methods to authenticate yourself. So if you're looking at the blockchain ecosystem, that might sound familiar, where you have isolated standards and ways how to identify yourself on each ecosystem. And that's what has held back adoption, the complexity, you know? So you don't have cross-chain availability. You have limited data availability, because if the user's offline, mostly their data is offline as well. And most of those things are just not compliant from a privacy perspective, but also from a financial regulation perspective. So this is where we step in. The idOS works cross-chain, EVM and non-EVM. The data is available even if the user is offline, and it's compliant. But one major thing is that it's interoperable. It's a composable stack that other identity companies and standards can actually work on, so that we can reduce the complexity. So that means we can build a joint user pool. If someone is onboarded onto Near, they can reuse it for getting the credit card on Gnosis. We can build additional features like analytics on top of it that's going to be available cross-chain. And we can use different standards like the Polygon ID standard or the Circle identity standard. I've talked a lot, and you might ask yourself, so, okay, when is it going to come live? And actually, Brandon, you've been working on it for quite some time. Let's show what we got.
Yeah, so we have a demo of the idOS here for you guys today. So what we'll be showing first is the idOS data dashboard. This is a user interface for end users to interact with their data on the system. We will also show you what it looks like to join the idOS network as a validator. We'll see it sync data, we'll see what it can and cannot read, and we will also see what happens when we leave the network and we miss some changes that happen on our idOS account. But first, getting started, we're going to log into the idOS using MetaMask. It's a fairly straightforward user flow if you've used any sort of dApp before. And once we're in, we can actually check out the different wallets that are contained within our account. So each time you query data from the idOS, you re-authenticate, and that's how it knows who you are. And this is only one of the several layers of privacy that it provides to its users. We can see here that it has one wallet. We're going to be changing this later, but first we're going to check out the credentials that are already within our system. Once we've authenticated, we can see that there are already several credentials that were added for my account from my KYC provider, Fractal. A key part of the idOS is that it is self-sovereign. I have control over all my data, but I can also allow KYC providers to add data on my behalf, and dApps can natively interact with this so that I don't need to port my data across different applications. It all happens out of the box for me. Now, let's spin up a node and see if we can read the data that we just saw within the idOS data dashboard. So you can see here, we have spun up a node, and we are now joining the network as a validator, and we can access our validator's local database using SQL to query the data back, and we're going to see if we can read that. So as you can see here, it contains the same data that was contained within my idOS account, so it looks like we have properly synced data from the network. And what we're now going to do is I'm going to generate a fake verifiable credential, and I'm going to add this to my account. And we're going to see, one, if our node can copy it, but two, what it can and cannot read from this credential. So coming into add a credential, it feels a lot like when you're interacting with a blockchain, but instead you're interacting with the idOS network. We're pasting our credential in there. It is encrypting in the client, and it is sending that to the idOS. And now we can check to make sure that we can actually decrypt this back within our data dashboard. As we can see here, it decrypts just fine. We can read this data back. And we can now flip back over to our node to see what the node can see from this data. So we're going to be executing that exact same query that we just did. But now we can see that there is a new credential within our account. And something I would like to point out here is that this data is end-to-end encrypted. There's no way for the validator to read this data unless you give them the decryption keys. It is the power of privacy is totally in the end user's hands, and there's nothing the node operators can do to take that away from them. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to actually shut down our idOS node, and we're going to make more changes to our idOS account, and we're going to see how privacy is continued to be preserved throughout that process. So I'm going to switch to a totally new browser. This could even be on a different machine, and I'm going to add a new access point to my idOS. So the idOS can support multiple wallets tied to your account, and we're going to be adding a new access point for our account. Just like adding a credential, it's like signing a blockchain transaction, and when we re-authenticate back, we can see that it properly added this address to our account, and we can now go sign into our account with this new wallet. Once we have signed in with a typical process flow, we can check back to make sure that we have access still with both wallets. And we are actually going to go and delete the original wallet we were using. So now the only access point for our idOS account is the wallet we are now using. Once that is deleted, we're going to click over to our credentials, and we're going to see if we can still access our own credentials, as well as if we can still decrypt the encrypted credentials that are living on the network for us right now. To go and decrypt it, we simply have to press this view button. It decrypts in our browser, and we can see all that same data that was submitted from a different wallet. Now, we're going to flip back to our terminal. We're going to bring back up our idOS node, and we're going to see if we can see the changes that occurred on the network while we missed it. So bringing it back up, it is syncing the blocks that it missed, and we can now go to our local database and see if we can read this data. So we're executing the exact same query that we ran last time, but this time we are using the new wallet address we just added to see if it recognizes it as a valid owner of those credentials. And as we can see here, it does. And just for completeness, we can also go and make sure that it caught that I removed the previous owner of that database. And we can see here that it recognizes that it does not have access to any of the data, and it should not be able to read this back. And so there's really three things I want to drive home about this demo that make this so unique among identity standards. First, the idOS is end-to-end encrypted. The user is the only one who can choose when they decrypt their data, or if a node operator is able to do it. The second is that the idOS is fully self-sovereign. I am the only one who can control my data. Even if a node is offline for when changes are made, they are forced to sync this data back once they rejoin the network. And third, the idOS is not wallet-centric, it is user-centric. Too many identity standards tie your credentials to your wallet, but you are not your wallet. Wallets are simply a way that you access the decentralized internet, and the idOS recognizes this by allowing you to access your credentials with any of your wallets across a variety of different ecosystems.
What I love about it is that we're not just talking about a vision, we're talking about something that is working as you saw it here. This is going to go live end of September with the 5 partners that we have, and 3 of which we already communicated, where we will have the MVP launch in November with real dApps, having implemented that on the ecosystem level to go live. Something that I want to stress here is we're talking about a system that is cross-chain. So meaning you can use it in EVM environments and you can use it in non-EVM environments, and you can still access the same data. You don't need to fork it. You can kind of, if you think about it, use it as a CRM, because when users come to you, you don't need to download the data and throw it into your Web2 AWS databases where data grows stale, but you can leave it where it is. You essentially don't necessarily even need to download it if the only purpose is that you know that it's there and that you can trust it, because that's something that you can, not because you trust us. You don't even need to trust us to keep running the idOS, but you just need to take a look at the protocol to see that you can actually run a node and join the ecosystem to become one of the building partners, to build up on top of it, like an analytics tool or a user acquisition tool, or you can join as a building partner and an ecosystem if you're interested in having identity enabled in your ecosystem. We believe that this year is the year that we will finally see decentralized identity become a crucial and central part of Web3, and we hope that we can help push that with the idOS. Thanks a lot.